is Sarah. With me tonight is Sarah Craig, and she'll be managing the meeting's logistics. This meeting is being hosted by Alameda County Department of Environmental Health and is being held to discuss and receive comments on the proposed environmental activities for the 603 A Street project in Hayward. We do have Spanish translation tonight, and I'm going to give Sarah a minute to explain how that works for anybody that might want to hear this meeting in Spanish.
Hello, everyone. Like Tracy mentioned, tonight's meeting is available both in English and in Spanish. If you are interested in listening to the meeting tonight in Spanish, I'm going to ask that you navigate to the bottom of your screen and click on the globe icon that says interpretation. If you're joining from your phone, you may not see the globe icon, and in that case, I'm going to ask that you click on the ellipses or the 3 dots, and from there you should be able to click on interpretation. Once you've clicked on interpretation, you'll be able to select either English or Spanish to listen to the meeting in, and then you'll have a moment where you can mute your original audio so you're not hearing both the English and the Spanish translations. I'm going to pause for a moment so that our interpreters may repeat what I just said. Okay, Tracy, I'm going to give it back to you.
Perfect, thank you. Again, I'm Tracy Craig, and I'll be moderating this meeting tonight for Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. A couple things to note: we do have Spanish interpretation, and this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded on YouTube for people to watch at a later date if they so choose. This is a Zoom webinar. That means that attendees do not have audio or visual feed. If you'd like to comment, please raise your virtual hand, or you can type your questions in the chat box as well. Sarah will be monitoring that. I see that we really only have 2 attendees, so I'm happy to promote you to panelists, and that way we can look at each other and talk. So I'm going to go ahead and give you those privileges if you like, and you can join us and we'll be able to see your face, and you'll have both audio and visual feeds. We do have 1 phone call in, and I don't believe that person can be promoted to a panelist. Okay. This meeting is being held to provide information about and receive public comments on plans to address environmental contamination in shallow soils at the 603 A Street project site. We are in the middle of the public comment period, which started September 7th and runs through October 8th. The public comment period was announced through a fact sheet that was distributed via U.S. mail and email. The slide shows our agenda. We'll start with introductions to the project team, followed by about a 15-minute presentation, and then questions and answers. I would like to ask our attendees to hold your questions till the end of the presentation, unless they are clarifying questions. Most of the questions actually get answered throughout the presentation. If you wish to ask a clarifying question, please raise your virtual hand, and Sarah will unmute you, or you can type it in the question in the chat box. Sarah, what do people do if they have a question and they've called in? Is it *6 to unmute?
It's *9 to unmute.
*9 to unmute. So for our phone, our attendee on phone, you can press *9 to unmute yourself. So first, I'd like to introduce our project team and what they do. Next slide, please. Okay. So this project is overseen again by Alameda County Department of Environmental Health. They will be overseeing the environmental aspects of this, which means cleanup of soil that's contaminated. Dylan Rowe is the chief of that division, and she usually is here tonight, but she's not. So Drew York is the case manager, and he will be giving the presentation this evening. And then also the city of Hayward approves the permits to allow for remediation construction. Bay Area Air Quality Management District also has their fingers in the pie. They respond to air quality complaints during construction work. That's both remediation work and construction work. Remediation work is the environmental portion. Construction work will actually be constructing vertical development. Next slide. And then again, we have our development team. So Christian Church Homes, they're the property owner, and they're overseeing the cleanup work. Important to note, they did not contaminate the site, but they're cleaning it up to support development. Their environmental firm is Essel Environmental, and with us tonight, I believe we have Roger, if I'm not mistaken, right, Sarah?
That's correct. Roger's on the line.
Forgive me, we have Alicia from Christian Church Homes tonight as well. And then their contractor is Cahill, and of course, Craig Communications, that's Sarah and me doing moderating the meeting this evening. Okay, so site location, I think probably most people know where the site is. It's in Hayward, and we have the coordinates there, A Street, Grand Street, B Street, and the railroad tracks. And the site is obviously shown in blue. Next slide. Okay, so Christian Church Homes has received it. They're entitled to develop this into a 5-story residential building. Entitled means that they have all they're ready to go, and it's been approved by the city. As I said, they didn't contaminate the site, but they will be voluntarily cleaning it up to support property development. The site soils have pesticides, metals, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons called PAHs, which are a byproduct of burning. Alameda County Department of Environmental Health oversees cleanup of below ground contamination. So that would be cleanup of the soil. Next slide, please. Okay. And I'm going to hand this over to Drew. He's going to go through the site investigations and how the proposal to clean up the property. And then I'll take it back over when we're talking about community protection measures. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. And thank you to the 2 participants or the 2 attendees. My department, Alameda County Department of Environmental Health, enjoys that that people come to these meetings and attend and learn about their community. So thank you to both of them. So starting with site investigations. So there's been a number of site investigations conducted at the site. There was one conducted in 2022, and that was without regulatory oversight before we were brought in. And that was to essentially evaluate subsurface conditions if there was contamination present. And then there were 2 environmental investigations conducted with oversight by us in May and July of 2023. And that was really to determine the extent of contamination found in the 2022 investigation. Investigation findings included contamination of pesticides, potentially from row crops or vegetation control, metals that included arsenic and lead, lead from potentially lead-based paint and construction, arsenic in construction materials, and then polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons or PAHs that potentially could be contributed to the lumber impregnation of lumber that the site acted as a lumber yard between 1920 and 1950s. So that contamination could be likely attributed to that. There was no elevated concentrations in groundwater. Like I said, arsenic was detected above environmental screening levels. This level is what the regulatory community thinks as above a background, a naturally occurring arsenic level. And then lead was also detected above a soluble waste disposal level. So when you are disposing of waste, there are different classifications for waste disposal. And lead was detected above that. Like I said, there are low-level pesticides and metals and PAHs found in shallow soil, and they'll be removed part of construction as well as the remedial excavation plan. Thank you. Next slide. So this is a figure that we're looking at, and I'll break the figure down for you. These grids are 50 by 50 foot grids. And when we entered into a voluntary remedial action agreement with the developer and owner, Christian Church Homes, we required them to grid the site out. And you can see that these grids will go across the entire site. And then from there, the blue circles, B1 through B9, was a soil boring collected to certain depth intervals up to 5 feet from ground surface. And that was the investigation in May 2023. The investigation in July of 2023 was to step out from those locations. So for example, you'll see B2 on the left, you'll see B2 10N and 2N or 20N, excuse me, and those are step out locations based on some contamination. So up in B7, that was the arsenic and soluble lead concentrations were found. B2, you had some pesticides, including chloridane and DDT. B6 had some lead concentrations, and then B9 had the PAHs, specifically benzoate-pyrene. Next slide. So to address this contamination, the property owner's environmental consultant submitted a remedial action plan. The remedial action plan has a bunch of components to it, and right now we're Alameda County Department of Environmental Health is currently reviewing that. We review that throughout the public comment period, and we take the public comments into consideration when we review this. So the remedial plans and specs, when I say remedial excavation plan, I'm sorry, I'm referring to, this is a set of engineering drawings that have plans and specifications as to what's going to be happening there. So it starts off where it summarizes all the soil investigation findings from May and July of 2023. It proposes targeted excavation, remedial excavation of contaminated soil. It includes community protection measures and dust mitigation measures, and then also discusses the truck traffic during remediation, staging areas, and things like that. Next slide. So for the proposed excavation, is to essentially just to remove the arsenic and lead in the northwest corner of the site where there's a proposed garden area or sitting area. And then there's going to be site-wide grading to bring the site down to rough grading for the foundations. And that's when the pesticides, metals, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, will be removed. As you can see in these pictures right here, you'll see this excavator directly loading into a dump truck. And that is one of our mitigation measures. That way, contaminated stockpiles, soil stockpiles are not left on site. If by chance there are, they will be covered. And also, if there are any soil that's left in place, we require that it is under hardscape and foundation areas where it cannot be accessed by people like utility workers and things like that. Next slide. So you can see here the targeted remedial excavation areas. So we require them to the environmental consultant to remediate to either a clean point, a known clean point. So you'll see this larger excavation goes through B4, B5, and B8. And that is the area of lead. The area of arsenic above background concentrations is within that that shape. And then you'll see the other figures, targeted excavation areas. This one at B2 will go down to a depth of 2.5 feet. The one at B6 will be excavated to a depth of 1 foot, and then B9 will be excavated to a depth of 2 feet. Next slide. So during that remedial excavation, we have community and construction worker protection measures in place. Part of the remedial excavation plan describes how air monitoring will be conducted. This air monitoring will be essentially done by the developer's environmental consultant, and that's Essel Environmental, and will be overseen by us. That requires baseline sampling and air monitoring prior to work. There'll be real time with perimeter air monitoring stations that have telemetry that will give real-time readings. It also describes health protection action levels in case things need to be shut down, as well as trigger points and dust levels for stopping work. The real-time environmental consultant on site will have the power to shut the project down if trigger levels or dust levels reach a certain threshold. Next slide. So this figure has a couple components that I'd like to point out. The circles on the left of the figure are called windrows diagrams, and they are usually taken from meteorological stations around the area, and they indicate prevailing wind directions. So it's a little confusing to read, but the red to yellow, then to the blue colors is the prevailing direction, and you can also see that in the black arrow on top in the top portion of the figure. So in order to measure and to monitor the dust levels and the air at the site during remedial excavation, we have two upwind monitoring locations, and those are the orange squares. And then we also have two downwind locations, and those are the yellow squares. The yellow square that the cursor is over right now is adjacent to a residential structure, a residential property, which is why we placed that one there. Next slide. And I think I turn this over to you, Tracy.
Good. So we recognize that community protection measures are very important, and most people joining us tonight want to make sure that their health is protected during this work. The first thing that I want to mention is a lot of thought goes into these plans, and this work is only actually about 1 week long, but a lot of thought and effort goes into how to safely remove the soil so that nobody is exposed to any dust that contains some of the contamination. So on-site soil management, best thing to do is to control the soil on site and make sure it doesn't get dusty. We do that by using water to keep the soil damp. As Drew mentioned, we direct load that soil right into the back of the truck to limit stockpiles. We have measurements on how fast you can drive around the site. And then also we stop work if it's windy. And then we make sure that the equipment is free of any kind of soil so it isn't tracked out when trucks are leaving the site or other equipment. And we also sweep the streets around the area daily. We don't expect any stormwater because this work will actually be happening sometime in the next month or so if it gets approved by Alameda County. But we do have plans for stormwater runoff to make sure that none of that contamination goes into the bay, and that includes using what you see in the second picture there, some wattles to keep the stormwater on site, and then using best management practices to keep the site tidy and to divert stormwater. And finally, we do have a sign on the site that has a number to call for questions or concerns. Next slide. Okay, and then truck management, another sticky point with communities. So trucks are not allowed to park in residential streets. They always turn off when they're loading. All trucks are covered completely before they leave the site, and then the undercarriages of the trucks and the tires are clean so that they don't track out any soil. We regularly monitor trucks to make sure that they're in good working condition, and all of the drivers are licensed to carry soil loads. And then we also follow the approved route to whatever landfill that we're going to. So out of the city of Hayward to the freeways and then off to the landfill. Next slide, Sarah. Okay, communications, as I said, we have site signage with a contact number that's installed on the perimeter of the fence, so people can call if they have questions or concerns or want to note something about the site they need us to fix or look at. We will distribute a work notice 5 days in advance and of the work so that you know that it's going on. And then finally, all the environmental reports, fact sheets, all communications for the project are posted on the Water Board's GeoTracker site, which Alameda County shares. And we have a link in the next slide showing where you can access that. Okay, so this is our schedule. As I said, the public comment period runs from September 7th to October 8th. If you have comments, you can give them to us tonight, or you can email them. More information on that in a moment. We will review all the comments and then issue a formal response to comments to all the people that provided comments. So we'll email that out. And then if the project, and that's if the project is approved. And then we will provide a letter that says it's they're ready to go. Work notice is distributed 1 week before, and then October, an environmental cleanup would begin in October, and again lasts only a week. Work hours are specified by the City of Hayward, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and work is only done during approved construction hours. Okay, so how to provide comments. Of course, you can provide comments at tonight's meeting. We're happy that you're here and we'd love to hear from you. You can also email comments to Drew. There's his email. Or finally, you can send them via snail mail if you're so inclined. Okay, for more information, I'm pretty much your go-to person. So my numbers should be on the site and I answer my phone 24/7. Part of my job. So if you have questions, concerns, if you think of something you wish you had asked, you can always call me. I really do answer my phone. You can call me just to find out if I answer my phone. But I'm really here as a resource to the community to try to figure out if there's any kind of issues and then to work with Alameda County and then also the responsible party to get those solved. And I think that concludes our presentation. Oh, Sarah, if you go back up one more time, and there's the GeoTracker site. So it's a long site. If you type that in and then in the search function put Christian Homes Hayward, the site will pop up and all of the documents sort of categorized. So community involvement and then the technical documents. Pretty easy to go through once you get there. So that concludes our presentation, and I would like to open it up to our 2 participants. If you have any questions or concerns or thoughts about the project, we'd love to hear from you. Sure, I see that Larry has his hand up and I am going to ask you to unmute yourself. Hi. Larry, I think you can talk now. You're unmuted. We're not hearing you, so, oh, he left. Oh, maybe he came over as a panelist. Perfect. Okay. So Larry, I think we can hear you now. You're connecting to the audio and we should be able to hear you. I'll give you a minute to figure it out. Larry, can you hear us? Do you want to type in the chat box, maybe if you can or not? He can hear us, okay. We can't hear you. But you could type in the chat box if you want, and I can read your question out or your concern or comment. Sarah, is there anything you would suggest he do to get his audio working?
Larry, oh, okay. It looks like Larry dropped his question. Oh,
Oh, we hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you.
Wow,
Wow.
that's strange. I
Okay.
generally don't use Zoom, so I guess usually Microsoft Teams or Google Meet, and I
Yeah.
guess my computer doesn't like Zoom so much.
We don't like it all that much either, so I feel you on that. So I'm going to let you go ahead
Anyway,
and ask the questions.
yeah, I mean, I'd just start off by commenting that this is actually a great process. I'm very, it's very thorough and nicely done. So thank you for this. So yeah, my question really is like, what triggered the investigation? What prompted anybody to even look for contamination?
Yeah, typically when there's property transactions, a phase one environmental site assessment comes out, and that includes like a history of all the historical operations on site. So in this area of Hayward, there was predominantly row crops in the late 1800s to 1900s throughout the city of Hayward. And then the phase one environmental site assessment did indicate that there was a lumber yard and then a restaurant. And then furthermore, there was some waste disposed. Apparently, the information on it is very limited, but there was some waste disposed apparently with the restaurant in 1994. So typically what happens is when it goes to a planner or developer, they have in this case, this would be the city of Hayward. They send it to us and have us look over it before they, for instance, approve their building permit to see if there are potential contaminants in the ground. And from there, what happens is the developer, in this case, Christian Homes, is both the property the property owner and developer, signed a voluntary remedial action agreement with us. Again, they didn't put the contamination there, but they're voluntarily cleaning it up in order to get their low income residential building done.
I'm just curious then what would happen if someone did not volunteer to clean it up?
It still remains a site in GeoTracker, and typically what would happen is the state water board would get involved and then would mandatorily require the property owner to clean it up.
But I think that, and Alicia, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe with Pierre that cleaning up the site was a condition of getting your permits from the city of Hayward. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I live right next door to the property, and my house is, an old Victorian. It's been here since 1915. So I was wondering if, the back lot is pretty large. If I wanted to do another unit on the back, should I be concerned that I need to do all this investigation and possible cleanup too? But I don't think there was anything other on this property than a house. But anyway, okay. Well,
Larry, you have my number. So if you have questions during the cleanup or any concerns, please feel free to call me.
yeah, so I guess that's another question is, you have all these mitigation measures and they're very thorough and all, but who's overseeing it? Is there an inspector or something, or is it just on the honor system that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do rather than the automatic loggers that you talked about?
Yeah, so typically, well, in this site and specifically, they'll have an on-site full-time environmental consultant who'll be checking these these perimeter dust monitors and checking them for trigger levels. They also have telemetry on them, so they'll be getting alerts via computer and phone if action levels are exceeded. And then also, we also require them to submit documentation in forms of weekly status reports and then remedial action completion reports when all the excavation is done. But the weekly status reports are usually posted to GeoTracker the Monday after the week, and they'll have things like what went on that week. It'll have some data in it from the air monitoring, if there were mitigation measures that had to be implemented, if there was any stop work, and then also what's planned for the following week.
What would happen if during this process they discover something even worse than they anticipated?
Yeah,
Is this all?
so there is contingency measures that are built in. They usually come in the form of a soil and groundwater management plan, and they are procedures that will be attached to the remedial excavation plan of unknown or unexpected conditions. That has happened in the past, of unknown heating oil tanks, for an example. And when that happens, there is a set of procedures that has to happen in terms of either investigating it, alerting different other regulatory agencies, and things of that nature, if there is unexpected conditions found.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I think the process is great, and I don't really have any concerns. I'm just want to be interested in being kept up to date. If there's any other notices or information published, I'd like to get it. But other than
Yeah,
that,
thank you for
Great.
your comment. Like I said before, we really enjoy people, participating in their community. So thank you.
Right, and we'd also like it if you would put if you'd like to get emails. We don't have that many updates on the project, but I think it would be a nice thing for you as a neighbor to give us your email, and we can send you any updates, as can Christian Homes, as they move forward. They wouldn't abuse it, just give you information you might need to know.
oh, I've been in touch with Alicia and everyone, so
Okay,
but I can
perfect.
give it to you guys too if
No,
you
no,
want
no, no,
something.
we're good. We're good.
Okay.
We
All right.
talked to Alicia.
All right. Thank you. That's it for me.
Well, thank you so much. And what about our other attendee that's on the phone? I'm wondering if you have any questions, and you can unmute yourself by hitting, I believe, the *9, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, well, this is Roger Witham. So I'm one of the attendees, but I don't have any questions since I was involved in all the investigation work to start with.
Okay, great. Well, good. Then I think if nobody has any other questions, that will conclude our meeting. I'd like to echo Drew's comments that we really do appreciate people attending. And if you have any questions or concerns, you can reach out to me directly, 510-334-4866. And I think that's all. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a nice evening. Good night.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.